Hey, somebody's got to board the windows. You have? Excellent. Good morning, afternoon, or evening. You are listening to The Professional Noticer. Hello, everyone. I'm Andy Andrews. Hey, thank you for making me a part of your week. My purpose here today, and with every show we do, is to play the part of best friend or coach. I want to help you live the life of your wildest dreams by giving you access to the greatest mentors the world has to offer today. The Professional Noticer is sponsored this week by GrowingDeer.com. If you already watch Growing Deer episodes or regularly visit the GrowingDeer.com website, you already know why the Professional Noticer is a fan. I'm fascinated by every episode, but hey, I love all things outdoors. On the other hand, there's my wife Polly. She loves the show too, and she loves all things indoors. So how could that be? Well, probably because GrowingDeer.com is about so much more than deer. Wildlife biologist Dr. Grant Woods hosts every week's program, and the subjects range from scientific tips about providing the right crops for deer to reach their antler potential, or how to thwart the intention of predators when they're trying to make a meal out of that beautiful little fawn. And sometimes we see a show about making jerky. And so whether you're an outdoor person or not, certainly you know an outdoor person, turn them on to growingdeer.com. And you check it out too. That's growingdeer.com. Observations and answers, that's what we do here on The Professional Noticer. And we love it when we have a guest who comes to the table with both. And we have a very unusual guest here that comes at a topic from different angles. I think that there's going to be interest in this from many different angles, from the interest of your possible career if you're a young person, for the interest in how this career is done, and what they've found. I guess the best way that I can introduce my guest is to say that I was surprised by a visit from them a couple of months ago, and now have watched their work and am just blown away. But these guys, and I have the principal here, Jonathan Petramala with Climate Productions. You are a weather guy, a chaser. You're a daredevil.
I'm a storyteller at heart, and it seems that the story that everybody can relate to is weather. And so I've been blessed over the last few years to focus mostly exclusively on weather and be a part of these events that matter to people's lives and impact people's lives. And I'm able to share those stories, and that's been very impactful to me and others as well.
Now you own your own company. You and your two principals, Andy and Brandon, and you guys were coming through here a couple of months ago, working on a documentary, and the documentary is done now. It is released, and it can be seen on weather.com,
Yep.
and it's called Disaster Road. Now, I just am amazed that I live right in the middle of Disaster Road, but I guess that's why you guys wanted to hear what I had to say about it. But the documentary is stunning.
Well, thank you.
And I'm curious as to how you guys got started in this, because you are, you don't meet people like you very often. Okay, I mean, you meet a baker, you meet a pharmacist, but to meet an Emmy award-winning producer of content that is going out internationally. And that's what you guys are. You guys just recently won an Emmy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Again, it's always going to come back to, I think our conversation is always going to come back to context and perspective. And we've been out in these events, these disasters. You kind of joke about living in the middle of Disaster Road. Well, think about in your own life, the disasters you've seen right here in Orange Beach just in the last 15 years, right? You had
Right.
Ivan and then Sally, most recently, I still see coming into town, a lot of damage, still needing repairs.
Yeah,
from
we're
Hurricane
still
Sally.
working on our house.
So exactly, and you've been
A
through
year
that.
later,
You
yeah.
have that perspective, and the same with us. We've been in these disasters where we've seen the real life impacts that these storms have, not only in the moment but for generations. And the basic theme of the part of the series that you're a part of, the third part from basically right here in Orange Beach over to Mexico Beach, Florida, is how these storms shape the coastline. And we've seen it not only just in terms of how, a sandbar will disappear or a pass will open up, but here in Orange Beach, how it was a sleepy, 1950s style home community just less than a generation ago to now. It's condos and hotels
Right.
lining the ocean front. And you mentioned in our interview how, in a way, it's sad that your children aren't going to be able to see how the beach used to be. But as we were here a couple of months ago, the tourists are back, the economy is booming, construction is booming, and that wouldn't happen as quickly if those condos and those major hotel chains weren't here. If it was like how it used to be, it would be a lot slower of a recovery. So,
Right.
yeah. So going back to your initial question of how we get into this. I've been working for local news for the last, 15, 17 years.
Yeah, I'm curious about the process. Where are you from, Jonathan? Where were you born? Where did you grow up?
Grew up in southeast Colorado, so about as far away from hurricanes and these storms as you could possibly imagine, on a farm. Grew up on a farm and a ranch, so weather in a way was always a major part of our life because
Sure.
as a farmer and a rancher, you're a partner with weather. You have to really pay attention because those animals that are under your care and the crops that you're growing, they really rely upon what's happening with the weather. And one of the biggest impacts I had as a child that I still remember was a blizzard in southeast Colorado back in '97, where we lost quite a few animals because of the way the storm blew in, the drifts. And so that was a big impact, and the visuals I still remember from that era. But the biggest takeaway I had from growing up on a farm was just how hard it was. It was a tough job. It was something that I didn't really want to continue with, but my parents were really supportive of. They were supportive in me finding what was my passion, and I was able to in college.
Yeah, what hooked you at first? I mean,
Yeah.
what was there a club? Was there a television show that you saw? Was there that event? What hooked you?
I have always been into the news, current events. Always paid attention, always knew what was going on, always knew where it was going on, knew the issues, was up to date, even as a kid, to what was going on politically, nationally, and internationally, what the issues and topics were. So I always had that kind of that interest and that passion for it. And in college, I went to Colorado State University. Ironically, a flood had really wiped out a lot of the university back in the '90s. And so they had a brand new communications studio with a television station and radio station. And so when I was still trying to figure out early on in my college what I was going to do, I was like, you know what, I'm going to go and I'm going to study journalism, and we'll see how that goes. And there was an ex-foreign correspondent that came in who worked for a local CBS affiliate. I listened to his presentation to the class, and everything he had talked about in terms of what it took for him to be successful in his career, from just kind of being able to roll with the punches, to be adaptable, to be aware of what's going on and have perspective on these subjects. It all clicked with me, and I was like, this is what I want to do. I want to go and be in the middle of these events and be the first draft of history. And so from there, I got an internship at that CBS affiliate later on with his help. And it's just been serendipitous ever since. My career has always, sometimes people are lucky they have a lot of opportunities. The doors are wide open for a variety of things. For me, it's pretty much always been one door that's been open. No matter how much success I have, it's like this one job is going to be open. It's not going to be 30. And so it just my life has always kind of continued to bring me down this path of journalism.
Now, you and Andy met each other at AccuWeather. Andy was with ESPN, and you were with AccuWeather, and you guys kind of combined, and then Brandon came on board. And how did you approach this? How did you approach? I mean, because you have to make a living at it. You can't just go do it as a hobby and hope somebody picks it up. You have to be kind of commissioned to do this kind of stuff. And so how did you guys approach that?
They were great examples because Andy was a freelance photojournalist, and that's where he was hired to come work with me on a blizzard in New York City. That was our first nor'easter together, and we seemed to click creatively, and as well as friends. So we had the same thoughts in terms of how to tell these stories with creativity and passion, and we had the same passions. And then Brandon, I met in Hawaii, actually, during Kilauea. He had shot some amazing, incredible footage that went viral all over the world. You might remember lava eating up a Ford Mustang, breaking through a gate. I mean, it was a wild video, and I was like, I need to meet this. I need to meet this guy, because how does somebody get in the right place for this wrong thing to happen? And he just seemed to have that knack. And so over time, we developed a trust and a friendship. And with their examples of showing that you can make a living, you can be independent, you can have an independent voice and do this on your own, I started thinking, I was like, you know what? I need to be more in charge of where the direction of my career and my life is going, because I have such a passion for this. I want to produce the best possible, truest content to what I believe in. And I felt that, again, when I talk about those doors, only one being open, guess what? That path to independence was the only door that was open to me. And so I walked right through it. I have no trouble just taking a step and trusting.
You know, I'm an amateur photographer. I have a camera that is much better than my capabilities, but I'm aware that if I can wait or shoot around something, that I may get that second, And when you guys were here, you showed me a clip of a walkway giving way that you had been focused and actually filming for hours to get that 1, 2, or 3 second clip of that going away. And your documentary, Disaster Road, is filled with those experiences. How do you look to put yourself in position for that? Because that could be a lot of wasted time.
Well, it comes down to the fact that we're 3 guys, and we each have skills that are different but complementary for each other. So I bring to the table, I hope, an ability to kind of get to the heart of an issue, to understand people's perspectives, to be able to give them a voice, and to tell a story. Andy, who shot the video of right over here on Orange Beach, the dock, basically the walkway going onto the beach just exploding in Hurricane Sally.
Right.
He's just such a visual person. He understands the rhythm of a disaster, where he could tell, he could just see it. He could see this little detail.
Because he set up on that hours
He
before.
did. He kept shooting 20-second, 30-second clips, then starting over, and then a minute here, starting over, because he knew, he could just see that detail, that walkway was going to collapse, that boardwalk was going to blow up. He just knew, and so he had the patience and the wisdom from years of experience being in these events. He's been in about as many as anybody out there. He just knew he'd have that moment. And Brandon, the same thing. He has also, like I said, that knack of being in the right place for the wrong thing to happen. He is kind of like it's one of those weird sixth sense that he has that really nobody else has. But he also, and this is time and time again, he outworks everyone. And so all of our combined specialty skills just really helps to create what you saw, which again, we're really proud of what we've been able to produce.
I've seen some of your B-roll, and it seems to me to be how would I put this? To be incredibly maybe the right word is uncomfortable. You guys seem to put yourselves, if not outright dangerous, then certainly incredibly uncomfortable situations for hours. And what is your mindset when you're, because while everybody else is doing everything they can to spot what they should get away from, you are looking at it from the opposite point of view, and you're saying that is what we should get into, and how can we film it without getting killed and present this? But what is your mindset when you're, I mean, because you guys, I've seen you wedged into places where the wind can't take you away or the water can't take you away, and I have a hard time understanding what that's like.
Well, I mean, I think everything we do is calculated. It's not as cavalier as you might, sometimes people think what we're doing is just very cavalier about our own safety. First of all, we want to live life. We believe we have a passion for life. We want to live, but we want to have that freedom to be able to make these decisions in our own lives.
Sure.
And I think a lot of people can understand that perspective, to have that freedom to pursue what you're passionate about. If I or we didn't put ourselves in these positions, I don't believe that we'd have the trust or the ability to report on these issues. Again, writing that first page of history, experiencing that first moment of what people are going to be talking about for generations, this Hurricane Sally, this Hurricane Michael, Hurricane Harvey, that's not a comfortable position. It's not a comfortable thing to live through. And so if we're not in that position that people are living through, how can we tell them what the story is without living that story? So we're very calculated. We understand how these storms work. We're very educated in terms of how hurricanes, tornadoes,
Right.
floods, blizzards, we've been in these. We have a lot of years of combined experience with these storms. We trust our instincts as well. I mean, we trust that we have a feeling. We're going to believe in each other and support each other and where to go and how to be safe. And we don't take what we consider dumb. We don't make what we consider would be a dumb, risky decision. We put ourselves in very safe structures that we know can handle this. And of course, nothing's perfect. Things are going to happen.
Have you guys ever had an opportunity where the three of you are in a position and two of you vetoed the other and said, we're not doing this?
No, because, for instance, Brandon understands that Andy and they both have kids, and it's bigger than just us. So, no, we're all very cognizant of the fact that we need to make sure that we're getting home to families, and we have loved ones that want to see us safe. And I tell my mom after, during every storm, I go, listen, I promise you I will be in the safest, most dangerous spot.
And I'm sure that thrills her. Yeah.
But she accepts it. She accepts it that this is a passion, and then this is the path that I've decided to go down. And I'm not the first journalist to be in a position that is maybe a little more risky than what some people might consider, comfortable in their own lives. But I think getting out of bed every day is a risk, and we just decided to go maybe a little extra, couple steps further.
I look at you guys and I wonder if you three are a little bit of you're kind of apart, because I have a son and he is different from my other son and from me. My oldest son and myself and my wife, I mean, I don't know that we're cautious, but we're not, we look at our younger son who does this, who catches sharks, and I was watching him release a 12-foot hammerhead in the surf, swimming with this hammerhead. And I'm thinking, how does he know how to do this? How does he I mean, how does he even know how to do this? Because you're just like right on the edge of it, whereas most of us would not even get close to the edge, and yet it draws him, and he is comfortable there, and he is very knowledgeable about it, and he is safe because of that. And so you guys two have found each other. You know your anomalies, and so that does, I guess, provide kind of a bit of team safety.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, again, we have years of combined experience in these disasters. I trust Brandon's ability to forecast something more than most meteorologists. He doesn't have a degree in meteorology, but he has the real world. I've seen this cloud before. I've seen this setup before.
Really?
I can tell you that a tornado is going to form because I've seen it. I've been there. I've done that, and it's an instinct thing. You have to trust. You have to trust yourself a lot of times, and you combine that with experience. You combine that with education. You combine that with learning, watching people, but. We also are three guys that love the freedom to be able to do this, and we have such a passion for it. And we provide, I think, an important service that I want people to always take away from the fact that these are very dangerous situations. These are very dangerous things. And so too often the media gets, and it's justifiably a bad reputation because they overhype things, because they don't have perspective. They've never been in these things, and they just they're parroting information, and that can be so dangerous, and it leads to the boy who cried wolf. I mean, there's a reason why that's a fable that's been passed down to so many different cultures.
Yeah, we talk about that around here. Because, people ask us sometimes, why don't these people leave? And we're like, well, I remember one storm that I walked outside, and I remember Geraldo Rivera leaning against the wind, and he's like falling, walking forward, trying to stay like in a lean position. And he actually said, the storm is crossing the Alabama-Florida line on the coast right now. Well, that's where my house is. Okay, that's where my house is. And I walked outside, and there were neighbors doing yard work. And so, it cost money to evacuate, and for people to close up, and for people to go get a hotel and take their kids out of school and get meals, and so you do that a couple of times a year, and then you tend to, because it's like they give the worst case scenario.
I don't know if it's something that's become instinctual in journalism schools and in producers who never leave a studio from the safety of Washington, D.C. or New York City, and they've never been out in the middle of the country. I don't know what's happened to people, but when I was talking about earlier, why do we put ourselves in these positions? Because otherwise, how can I talk about it?
Right.
And that's where I think we have a double-edged sword of society right now, where we have the most information ever in human history at our fingertips, and we can choose to seek out what we feel is correct and is true. And so that's what I challenged people to go and seek out alternative sources of information. It's out there. There's truth out there, but you have to be an active participant in truth. And when you find out that somebody's lied to you, don't trust them again.
Yeah.
That's shame on you at that point.
Right.
But there's alternatives out there. I believe that we bring a pretty truthful perspective and realistic, real world common sense of what's going on out there. Again, I don't know why you turn on the TV and people want to do that, other than it's an ego thing. When you talk about Geraldo, it's probably an ego thing.
Right. Yeah.
He wants to be about him, and he wants it to be, look at me, I'm brave, I'm here. pay attention to me
Yeah.
and don't go to another reporter. Stay on me.
Yeah.
I've seen that in a couple of circumstances with different networks as well.
I've got a curious question for you. We had, and I'm curious about your comments about this. We've talked about it. You and I have talked about this a little bit, but last year when Sally came in, my family, we've lived here all our lives, and so we've been through storms that we've evacuated. We've been through storms that we didn't evacuate, and we have always erred on the side of caution. We've never been in what I considered a really dangerous situation because of just paying attention and doing ahead of time, and so here comes Sally last year, and this is a Cat 1 storm, and nobody left because it was a Category 1. We've been through so many Category 1s. Nobody really everybody just gets the stuff off their docks, and
Brings the pool furniture in.
Yeah, brings the pool furniture in, and nobody really pays that much attention. You just know you're not going outside. You go to the grocery store, but here's Sally coming in, and nobody left. Nobody left. And then that thing parked on us and increased. And 17 years before, we had Ivan.
To the hour.
To the hour.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when we went out the next morning, the scene was very similar, if not worse. Yeah. Because Ivan just took pine trees and structures, but Sally took oak trees, pecan orchards. I mean, 20, 30 miles north of here. And it still freaks us out to think, we stayed? How did that happen?
It goes back to the boy who cried wolf. The media's lost the trust of people, and then people are taking into account past storms when the fact is each storm is different. Miles matter, especially in hurricanes. Miles matter. If it's just maybe 5 miles closer to you than the last one you went through, you're going to have a whole different experience than the one you had before. So the series really shows and brings into clarity, I think, the fact that what's changing. Storms that would hit the Gulf Coast before usually would weaken. Now they're strengthening. Storms that would maybe rain 10 inches are now coming with 22 inches, 24 inches, 30 inches. So what the climate researchers are pointing to is climate change, that it's an amplifying factor. That's what the change is doing. It's amplifying a storm that would have done this before, now is doing this. And so we all need to be aware of that and expect, at least, you can say climate change is a bunch of liberal nonsense all you want, and that's again, that's fine. But we know for a fact that we've seen in the last century, just in the last 20 years, the highest surge ever, Hurricane Katrina, right? The most rainfall ever, Hurricane Harvey. Then, for instance, 2 years after Harvey, there was Tropical Storm Imelda. It was barely even named, dropping 40 to 60 inches of rain in parts of Texas as well. You've had a no-name storm flood Baton Rouge back in 2016. If you remember those horrific, or it might have been 2017. There's so many disasters. But again, that's why this is Disaster Road. There's been just countless billion-dollar disasters right here in the I-10 corridor between Houston and Florida. And it doesn't seem like it's going to stop anytime soon. So that's why, again, prepare for the worst, expect it. And then if it doesn't happen, that's okay. You're okay this time. Right. But it's coming. It'll happen. You live on the Gulf Coast. We live in a very volatile area. We're not California, where we have beautiful weather and no mosquitoes, right? In Southern California, we live in the Gulf Coast. Hurricanes happen here. And unfortunately, there's an amplifying effect that's been occurring over the last few seasons where these storms are getting a little stronger. They're dropping more rainfall. And one of the things I really want people to be aware of, it might just be a Cat 1 now, but we're seeing more and more rapid intensification where a storm like Hurricane Laura, people kind of ignored it. And then it went from a Cat 2, I believe, to a Cat 4 just overnight. That's like 100 miles an hour difference in some aspects of where the storm was and then what it became. And that's something that people need to be aware of, because if you live in these communities, it's tough to evacuate here.
Yeah.
There's very limited ways to leave. And so that's why, instead of blaming and pointing fingers at the media, you need to take into account your own family safety and your own safety. And again, you're responsible for the information that you consume, and you can find the truth. It just takes a little bit more effort.
Right. Yeah. Just be a little more discerning.
More discerning, and put a little more effort into it.
Right.
It's out there. We have information at our fingertips, right in my pocket right now. This supercomputer that could take us to the moon.
So one last question.
Yeah.
And that is, has there been a moment that you were involved in something and you second guessed yourself, that you thought, man, maybe we shouldn't be here?
No, not at all. It's one of
Really?
those, no, because again, we really are cognizant about what we're doing. I know it seems from the outside we're being very cavalier about our safety, and we're just being, throwing caution to the wind, literally. That's not the case. I'm telling you, we're very, very cognizant of what we're doing, how we're doing it. We're relying on, years and years of practice at this.
What's the oddest thing you've seen? I told you I had to ask one more question.
Hurricane Zeta, which became a major hurricane. It was down in Golden Meadows, Louisiana, is where I was. So that's southeastern Louisiana, close to Grand Isle. And I was with Brandon, but he was in another car. We were in two separate cars. And I was by myself in my car. Brandon was by himself in his car. And I thought we were going to attack this hurricane from New Orleans. I thought we were going to go up in New Orleans, and that's where we were going to cover the hurricane. But I'm looking at the time, I'm seeing the radar, I'm seeing where the storm is, and I'm like, oh, okay, so we're going to ride this one out in our car. I gotcha. And there was a gentleman who had pulled up in this kind of an old beater Ford car, and he looked rough. And he talked to us, and he's like, oh, I'm a storm chaser. I'm like, okay. I thought he was a crab fisherman or something, just a local,
right,
wanting to ask questions about why I was here, or what I've seen or something. And he's like, I'm a storm chaser, and I'm like, okay. And in the middle of the storm, I'm doing a Facebook Live, just it's whiteout. You can't see 20 yards. I mean, it's just blasting. Homes behind me, the roofs are exploding. I mean, it's wild. This guy's just out of his car, no camera. He's just standing, getting blown by the wind with his long hair. He's bald with long hair. And it was just the most bizarre thing I've ever seen. I was like, what are you doing? We're pretty safe there. I mean, again, all the things we're doing is calculated. You're like, well, why are you in your car in a hurricane? Are you out of your mind? Well, we're in the middle of, we were close to an escape route. We're off a bayou. We're not worried about major objects crashing into us because it's an open water kind of situation and stuff. So he was okay, but what are you doing getting out of your car in wind's probably blasting 120 some miles per hour right into him? And it was just one of those moments of like, only, unless you're there, you just wouldn't believe it.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it was a wild. So that was pretty wild. Of course, you see people driving into floodwater a lot of times, and you're like, there's 30 cars already swamped. What are you doing driving into this? People just they lose their minds sometimes. They just panic, and that's one thing we don't do. We don't panic. And
Well,
yeah.
we want to link to you guys on the show notes. How can we follow you? How can we keep up with you guys?
Yeah, please. We'll have the link to the weather.com, which is where our Disaster Road series
Okay.
just debuted. So that's exciting. I'm glad you got a chance to see it before we had our conversation today.
Yeah.
You can follow us there. You can see the series, and I hope that people really do click on it because I think it can bring perspective to this complicated subject of climate change and what the real impacts are. Again, this isn't a series where we're going to be wagging our finger at you, telling you how little you know and how you need to change your life. All this is to show you the real world impacts of what's happening, how maybe you can protect yourself by paying attention a little bit closer and preparing for like a storm like Sally or the storms that are coming this year because we know they're coming.
Right.
So I think that it's a good series about that as well, and maybe give some more empathy too when you see some of these stories of what people are still going through years after storms. You know, this is not a couple of months, the cameras are gone, so everybody's fine. This is people will be dealing with this for years after a storm, so people need to take into account that empathy of what people go through. But you can do that. Twitter, J Petramala. Instagram, J Petramala. Jonathan Petramala, Storytellers on Facebook. Have a small but loyal community following me there. And again, seek out the truth. It's there. I just encourage people to really make that take that little extra step to seek out the truth and find voices that they can trust, because we live in a wild world and it's getting more and more chaotic, and we can find the truth as long as we trust ourselves and seek it out.
Well, man, we will provide the links. Thank you
sir.
for your time, and thank you for your work. Jonathan, thank you for being with us.
It's been a real pleasure. Thank you.
Awesome.
All right.
I'm Andy Andrews, the professional noticer, harnessing common sense and wisdom to plow through challenges all the way to an answer for you. And I think that'll do it for this week. Get us out of here, Matthew. So, ladies and gentlemen, and to the boys and girls who aspire to become ladies and gentlemen, we have reached the end of another episode of The Professional Noticer. In a world where common sense has become a superpower, I'm harnessing the tiny bit of mental energy I have for you, seeking wisdom, making observations, and endeavoring to answer tough questions in a way that will empower your family and your business. I'm Andy Andrews. Until next week, goodbye. This episode of The Professional Noticer was produced by Matt Lindert. The Noticer theme written and performed by Sugarcane Jane. Hurricane shelters provided by Twinkle and Smoke of Beverly Hills. Additional financial consideration provided by the Benjamin Franklin Weather Station. Do your kids get bored when it rains? Would you like to harness all that energy and send it in a useful direction? Well, during the next thunderstorm, send those kids outside with the Benjamin Franklin Weather Station. Historically accurate, this vintage toy is sure to light them up on those gray summer afternoons when lightning streaks the sky. Your kit includes everything your child needs to prove electricity, just like old Ben did more than 200 years ago. You'll receive the kite, 200 yards of cotton string, and a metal key to tie to the end of it. Order now, and we'll include the Founding Father eyeglasses at no extra charge. That's the Benjamin Franklin Weather Station for a shocking display of science and history.